Snow fell like shredded confessions outside the Grand Hotel Étoile des Alpes, burying the world in white silence. At 3:17 a.m., the scream came, thin, animal, final. In the locked conservatory, beneath a chandelier of frozen blood, lay Emile Voss, throat opened ear to ear, eyes wide as communion wafers. A single black feather clutched in his rigid hand. No footprints in the snow, no key in the lock, only the scent of myrrh and the ticking of a stopped grandfather clock. Hercule Poirot, summoned by telegram, stepped from the funicular into the storm. Chapter 1. The House That Snow Built. Snow did not fall upon the Grand Hotel Étoile des Alpes. It descended in deliberate, murderous sheets, each flake a tiny white coffin nail driven into the mountainside. The funicular had ceased its climb 2 days prior, cables iced into stillness, and the avalanche that followed had sealed the only road with a wall of white 20 feet high. 12 souls remained inside the hotel, 13 if one counted the corpse, and the storm showed no sign of repentance. Hercule Poirot arrived at dusk, stepping from the emergency sled with the precision of a man who disliked both haste and untidiness. His patent leather shoes sank ankle-deep into the drift. He regarded the offence with a moue of distaste, then brushed the crystals from his moustache as though dismissing an ill-mannered child. The manager, Herr Klaus Ritter, waited on the portico, lantern held high, the flame trembling in sympathy with his monocle. "Monsieur Poirot," Ritter said, voice clipped like a telegram, "your reputation precedes you, though I confess I did not expect the continent's foremost detective to answer a summons from a hotelier." Poirot inclined his head. When the telegram reads, "Murder in locked room, no footprints, black feather," even Hercule Poirot suspends his disbelief in the dramatic. "Lead on, Herr Ritter." The little grey cells grow chilled. They passed beneath an archway carved with Edelweiss and Latin mottos no one had translated since the Kaiser's day. Inside, the lobby exhaled warmth and beeswax, but the air carried an undercurrent of myrrh and something metallic. Blood, Poirot catalogued, already congealed. A grandfather clock ticked with the solemnity of a metronome counting down to judgment. Its hands pointed to 2:47, though the hour was past 6. Ritter noticed the glance. "The clock in the conservatory stopped at the moment of death. We have not touched it." "Death is rarely so punctual," Poirot murmured. "But let us begin with the living." The guest register lay open on the mahogany desk, ink frozen in the nib. Ritter recited the names with military cadence. Emile Voss, Swiss industrialist, age 53, resident of Geneva. Found deceased at 3:17 a.m. in the conservatory. Throat incised from left carotid to right jugular. Exsanguination rapid. Continue. Isolde Voss, née von Hohenlohe. Age 31, his wife. Viennese soprano. Retired from the stage after marriage. Discovered the body. Retired or silenced? Poirot's eyes gleamed. One wonders. Dr. Lysander Crowe, age 47, English, self-described occultist, and lecturer on the esoteric. Guest lecturer at the hotel's winter salon. Madame Solange, age unknown, Parisian, medium and spiritualist, travels with a raven in a wicker cage. Poirot's moustache twitched. A raven, naturellement. And myself, Ritter concluded. Klaus Ritter, late of the Prussian Guard, manager these 15 years. The staff, maids, porters, chef, number 7, all accounted for. 12 plus 1 corpse, Poirot counted, and the raven makes 14. We are a regular Noah's Ark of suspicion. Ritter led him through corridors panelled in dark walnut, past tapestries depicting alpine hunts where the stag's eyes followed with glassy accusation. Crystal sconces flickered. The electricity faltered whenever the generator coughed in the basement. They paused before double doors of frosted glass, etched with stars. "The conservatory," Ritter announced, producing a keyring heavy as a jailer's. "Locked from the inside. The only key is this one, which never left my belt." Poirot examined the lock. Chubb, 1890s, pick-resistant, no scratches. The doors opened inward with a sigh of warm air, scented by orange trees and something sweeter, more cloying. Blood. The conservatory was a glass cathedral to winter's cruelty. Snow pressed against the panes like a living thing, distorting the world beyond into smears of grey. Palms and ferns drooped under the weight of frost. A fountain had frozen mid-spurt, icicles dangling like stalactites. At the centre, beneath a chandelier whose prisms dripped crimson, lay Emile Voss. He reclined in a wicker chaise, as though merely napping, save for the ruin of his throat. The wound gaped obscenely, edges curled like parchment held to flame. Blood had sheeted across his white tie and waistcoat, then frozen into rubies. His right hand clutched a single black feather glossy as oil. His left held rigour in a gesture of benediction. Poirot circled the body with the reverence of a priest at an altar. No struggle, the chaise is unmoved. He sat willingly for his portrait in death. Ritter swallowed. The scream came at 3:17. I was in my office, logging the night's accounts. The maid, Anna, confirmed the time. She was polishing silver in the pantry adjacent. We ran here together. The doors were locked. We broke the glass panel. He gestured to a jagged hole wrapped in tape, and found him thus. Poirot knelt. The blood had frozen in perfect spirals, as though an artist had taken a palette knife to it. He produced a pocket lens. The cut is surgical. One stroke, left to right, descending angle. The killer stood behind the chaise, reached over, drew the blade across. Intimate, personal. He lifted the feather. Raven. Primary flight feather, tip singed as if held to a candle. Curious. Ravens do not frequent conservatories. From the doorway came a rustle of silk. Isolde Voss entered, furs trailing like a bridal train. Her face was a study in porcelain grief, cheeks blanched, eyes violet smudges. Yet Poirot noted the steadiness of her hands as she clasped a locket at her throat. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, voice husky from disuse or tears. "They said you would come. Emile kept ravens, you know, in the old aviary behind the hotel. He believed they carried messages to the dead." Poirot bowed. "Madame, my condolences. Tell me of your husband." She approached the body, fingers brushing the frozen blood without flinching. Emile was precise. He built empires on ball bearings and secrecy. 10 years ago, his first wife, Annalise, vanished in an avalanche. They never found her. He said the mountain kept her. After that, he collected ravens, said they were her eyes. The locket slipped from her grasp, clinking against the tile. Poirot retrieved it. Inside, a curl of dark hair, coarse, masculine. Emile's own clipped post-mortem, or another's? Isolde's gaze drifted to the chandelier. He was writing a memoir, about guilt, about the snow that buries everything. Ritter cleared his throat. Madame Voss retired at midnight. I locked the conservatory myself at 11:58. Herr Voss requested privacy to work. The windows are sealed by frost. The skylight is 30 feet high with no ladder access. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet the clock stopped at 2:47. The scream at 3:17, 30 minutes unaccounted. Where were you, madame, between those hours?" Isolde's chin lifted. "In my suite, reading. The walls are thick, but I heard nothing until the scream." Poirot turned to Ritter. "The master key. Show me." Ritter unclipped the ring. 5 keys. 1 brass, ornate, labelled Conservatoire in faded script. Poirot tested it in the lock, smooth, oiled. He then examined the broken glass panel. The edges were sharp, no blood on the inner side. Whoever broke it had done so from outside. "Curious," Poirot said. "The killer locks the door from within, breaks the glass to exit, yet leaves no footprints in the snow outside. The conservatory is surrounded by a balcony, 10 inches of fresh powder. Immaculate." He stepped onto the balcony. Wind whipped his coat. Snow stung like nettles. The balcony rail was unbroken, the drop to the ravine sheer. No rope marks, no disturbance, save a single raven feather caught in the balustrade, identical to the one in Voss's hand. Inside, the clock gave a single, mournful chime, though its hands had not moved. Isolde gasped. "It hasn't sounded since 2:47, Poirot finished. Yet now it speaks. Someone winds it still." From the rafters high above, a shadow detached. A raven, sleek, enormous, landed on the chandelier. It regarded them with eyes like chips of obsidian, then opened its beak and dropped a second feather. This one was wet, glistening with fresh blood that steamed in the warm air, before freezing into a crimson teardrop on the marble. The bird croaked once, a sound like a coffin lid closing, then launched into the storm. Poirot watched it vanish. "The house that snow built," he murmured, "is full of wings." He turned to Ritter. "Assemble the guests in the library. Hercule Poirot will begin with the living. The dead, they have already spoken." But as they left the conservatory, Poirot paused at the threshold. In the frost on the glass, someone had traced a single word with a gloved finger. Soon the letters melted, even as he read them, running like tears down the pane. Chapter 2. The Medium and the Mirror. The library of the Grand Hôtel Étoile des Alpes smelled of pipe tobacco, old leather, and the particular staleness that clings to books no one has opened since the Treaty of Versailles. A fire crackled in a hearth carved with ibex and edelweiss, throwing long shadows across the Persian rugs. The 12 remaining souls arranged themselves in a semicircle of velvet chairs. As though posed for a séance none had requested. Hercule Poirot stood before the mantel, hands clasped behind his back, green eyes cataloguing each face with the patience of a jeweller assessing flawed gems. The raven's second feather, still damp, lay on a silver salver at his elbow, its blood already browning. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, voice soft yet carrying to the rafters, "we are imprisoned by snow and by murder. Until the avalanche is cleared, we are each other's jailers and suspects. Let us begin with truth, or at least the pretense of it." He gestured to Madame Solange. The medium sat draped in black lace, her blind eyes milky as moonstones. A wicker cage rested on the table before her. Within, her raven shifted, wings rustling like dry paper. "Madame claims communion with the dead. Tonight, we shall test the connection." Dr. Lysander Crow leaned forward, beard bristling with skepticism. "A parlour trick, Poirot. Voss paid her 50 francs a sitting to hear his first wife's voice. Sentiment, not spirits." Solange's head tilted. "The veil is thin here. The mountain remembers blood." Poirot lifted the silver mirror from its velvet pouch. It was oval, heavy, the glass etched with sigils that hurt to follow. Dr. Crow, You sold this to Monsieur Voss. You claimed it once belonged to Gilles de Rais and would show the last face the dead beheld. Demonstrate." Crow hesitated, then took the mirror. He angled it toward the firelight. For a moment, the glass showed only flame, then a flicker, like a face dissolving. Isolde Voss gasped. Her hand flew to her locket. "Nothing," Crow declared, but his knuckles were white. Poirot took the mirror, held it to Voss's imagined eyes. Blank. He turned it slowly. A hairline fracture bisected the silver backing, running from top left to bottom right, the exact angle of the throat wound. "Curious," Poirot murmured. "A straight edge for murder?" Solange's fingers spidered across the table. "Give me the feather." Poirot placed the bloody quill in her palm. She pressed it to her forehead. Her lips moved soundlessly. The raven in the cage answered with a guttural croak. "She walks," Solange intoned, voice suddenly layered, as though two women spoke. "A woman in white. She weeps snow. She says, 'The truth is buried with the first wife.'" Isolde rose so violently her chair toppled. "Annalise is dead. The mountain took her." "Yet mountains keep secrets," Poirot said gently. "Madame, where were you at 2:47 a.m. when the clock stopped?" "In my room, asleep." "Alone?" Her hesitation was fractional. "Yes." Ritter cleared his throat. "The dumbwaiter jammed at 2:30, between the kitchen and the second floor. Something heavy inside. The mechanism is old, requires 2 men to free it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then let us free it." They descended to the service corridor, boots echoing on stone. The dumbwaiter shaft yawned like a throat. Ritter and the porter hauled on the ropes. Pulleys screamed. The cage rose inch by inch, revealing first a woman's kidskin shoe, size 36, monogrammed AV, then a sodden hem of white lace, frozen stiff with blood. Isolde stared, as though at a ghost. "That was Annalise's slipper, from her wedding trousseau." Poirot lifted the shoe. The sole was caked with tunnel mud. Dark, loamy, impossible in the snowbound hotel. The mountain gives up its dead after all. Crow examined the lace. "Blood is fresh, less than 6 hours old." Solange whispered, "She was never dead, only buried." Upstairs, the library fire had sunk to embers. Poirot arranged the clues on the table like a hand of patience. The 2 feathers, the mirror, the shoe, a torn page from Voss's ledger found snagged on his bedpost. The ink was crimson, the words frantic. "Tonight the snow will bury everything." "Someone anticipated Monsieur Voss's plans," Poirot said. "But who?" He turned to Ritter. "Your boots, monsieur." Ritter stiffened. "What of them? They are wet, with mud." The manager's face drained. I checked the boiler room at 2. The pipes sweat." "Yet the boiler room is tiled. No mud." Poirot's voice was silk over steel. "You know the tunnels, ja?" Ritter's monocle flashed. "Collapsed in 1925, sealed." "Yet this shoe travelled through them." Poirot lifted the slipper. A pebble of quartz clung to the sole. "From the old sanatorium level, someone has been digging." Solange began to sway. "The raven flies backward," she murmured. "The killer wears the victim's face." The candles guttered. In the sudden darkness, glass cracked, the mirror splitting fully down the fracture. When the light steadied, each shard showed a different reflection. Voss alive, smiling, throat intact. Crow lunged for the pieces. "Illusion! Stagecraft!" Poirot caught his wrist. "Or confession. The mirror remembers what the eye forgets." From the corridor came the groan of ropes. The dumbwaiter descending again. Unbidden, the cage struck bottom with a thud that rattled the chandelier. Inside lay a single object, A wax cylinder, labelled in Voss's hand. Scream, 3:17 a.m. The raven in the cage screamed with it, a perfect echo. Poirot's gaze swept the room. The performance begins, but who, mes amis, holds the script? Chapter 3. The Shoe and the Ledger. The wax cylinder spun on the gramophone in the library, its needle trembling like a trapped moth. The scream that issued forth was thin, animal, final, identical to the one that had shattered the hotel's sleep at 3:17 a.m. Yet the record was dated yesterday, in Emile Voss's spidery hand. The raven in Madame Solange's cage answered with a shriek of its own, wings battering the wicker bars. Hercule Poirot lifted the needle. Silence fell, thick as the snow outside. "Pre-recorded," he announced. "The scream was theatre, but the blood, that was real." He turned to the dumbwaiter shoe, still dripping onto the parquet. "Size 36, monogram AV, Anneliese Voss, yet Anneliese perished 10 years ago. Or so the mountain would have us believe." Isolde Voss stood frozen, furs clutched to her throat. "It's impossible! They searched for weeks." "Mountains are patient liars," Poirot said. "Come, we descend." The service stairs spiraled into the hotel's bowels, past wine cellars and laundry chutes, to a door of warped oak bound with iron. Ritter produced a key. The lock groaned like a dying man. Beyond lay the boiler room, pipes sweating, coal dust thick as funeral ash. The dumbwaiter shaft gaped in the wall, ropes frayed. Poirot shone his torch upward. Scratch marks scored the wood, fingernails broken to the quick. Someone climbed, or was pulled. He knelt. The pulley bore fresh gouges, metal bright where paint had flaked. 200 pounds, minimum, the weight of a man, or a body in rigour. Ritter's monocle glinted. The shaft opens to every floor, but the kitchen hatch was bolted from within at midnight. "Bolted," Poirot repeated, "yet unbolted now." They followed the shaft's route upward, emerging in the second-floor corridor outside Voss's suite. The door stood ajar. Inside, the room was a shrine to obsession. Photographs of Anneliese everywhere. Smiling in Vienna, skiing in Gstaad, her wedding veil a cloud of lace. One portrait had been slashed, the canvas curling like burnt paper. On the desk lay the ledger, bound in raven feathers. Poirot opened it with gloved fingers. Entries in crimson ink. A page was torn, corner snagged on the brass bedpost. Poirot retrieved it from the floor. "Isolde is not Isolde." Isolde entered then, breath clouding in the chill. "What does it mean?" "That your husband questioned reality," Poirot said, "or someone wished him to." He moved to the wardrobe. Inside, a woman's dress, white lace, blood-stained, hung beside Voss's dinner jacket. The hem matched the scrap in the dumbwaiter. Anneliese's wedding gown, worn recently. Isolde touched the fabric. He kept it pressed, said it smelled of her still. Poirot's nose wrinkled. "It smells of myrrh and formaldehyde, embalming fluid." From the corridor came a clatter. Dr. Crow appeared, carrying a leather case. "You'll want this," he said, opening it to reveal surgical instruments. Scalpel Novata 3 was missing. "Voss's wound," Poirot said. "Your specialty, docteur?" Crow's beard twitched. "I treated his gout, nothing more." Poirot lifted the torn ledger page to the light. The ink was still tacky. "Written in haste. The paper is hotel stationery, watermarked with the étoile crest. Someone tore it moments before death." Ritter entered, boots leaving muddy prints. Poirot pounced. "The mud again, monsieur. From where?" The manager's face crumpled. "The old service tunnel, behind the wine cellar. I checked the foundations when the snow load's heavy." Show me. They descended again past the boiler to a bricked-up archway. The mortar was fresh, crumbled at a touch. Beyond, a tunnel yawned, shored with rotting timbers. The air was colder, damp with the breath of the mountain. Torchlight revealed iron beds, patient charts yellowed with age. A tuberculosis sanatorium, abandoned 1925. One bed held a skeleton, wrist chained to the rail, raven feather necklace tangled in the ribs. The skull was cracked open, brain pan empty. "Surgical," Crow whispered. "Trephination, medieval." Poirot knelt. The chain was new, bright steel. "Someone staged this, recently." On the wall, carved with a scalpel, "The truth is buried with the first wife." Isolde swayed. "Annalise, no," Poirot said. "Dental records will prove otherwise. This is theatre, like the Scream." He found the gramophone in the corner, wound it. Annalise's voice, tinny and perfect. "If I vanish, look to the mirror. The truth is reflection, not reality." Ritter lunged for the record. Poirot sidestepped. The manager's sleeve tore, revealing a raven tattoo. Fresh, skin still red. "Curious," Poirot said. "You serve the birds, not the guests." Ritter's monocle fell, shattering on the stone. "Voss paid me to keep the tunnel open, smuggling, diamonds in the raven's eyes." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the skeleton?" "A vagrant. Died last winter. Voss wanted a body, said it completed the picture." Isolde backed away. "He was mad. Or brilliant," Poirot countered. "He planned to fake his death. Frame you, madame. Escape with the diamonds." Crow laughed bitterly. "And I sold him the props. The mirror, the recordings, but I didn't kill him." Poirot lifted the raven necklace. "So you don't?" Feathers were singed, identical to those at the crime scene. Someone improved his script. From the tunnel's depths came a thud, then another, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Poirot shone the torch. The beam caught a woman's face, pale, eyeless, mouth sewn shut with black thread. She wore Annalise's wedding gown. For a moment, she seemed to breathe. Then the light flickered. When it steadied, the figure was gone. Only the gown remained, pooled on the floor, blood spreading like spilled ink. Ritter crossed himself. "Got him, Himmel!" Poirot's voice was calm. "The mountain keeps its dead, but someone walks them still." He turned to the group. "We return to the conservatory. The next act begins." As they climbed the stairs, the gramophone in the tunnel began to play again. Annalise's voice, laughing now, the sound echoing up the shaft like a promise. The library fire had died to coals. Poirot arranged the new clues. The skeleton's feather, the torn ledger page, the missing scalpel's outline in Crow's case. The raven in the cage watched with obsidian eyes. "Someone," Poirot said, "knew Voss's plan and turned his illusion into murder." He looked at each face. Isolde's grief, Crow's defiance, Ritter's fear, Solange's blind serenity. The shoe fits no one yet, but the clock ticks. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the windows like bones in a box. Chapter 4. The Tunnel of Echoes. The tunnel swallowed sound the way snow swallows footprints. Hercule Poirot descended first, lantern held high, the flame a small defiant heart against the mountain's lung. Behind him came Ritter, torch trembling. Dr. Crow, scalpel case clinking. Madame Solange, guided by Isolde's arm. And the raven, released from its cage, gliding ahead like a black herald. The air grew colder with every step, exhaling the breath of the dead. The passage narrowed, timbers groaning under centuries of frost heave. Patient charts fluttered from rusted clips, names, dates, sputum counts in faded violet ink. One read, Annalise Voss, Admitted 12th of March 1925. Discharged 18 March. Deceased. The word was crossed out, rewritten in red, escaped. Poirot paused. Discharged to death, yet escaped. Someone rewrote the record. The tunnel opened into the sanatorium ward proper. 30 iron beds in 2 rows, mattresses long rotted to dust. Moonlight filtered through a ventilation grate high above, striping the floor in silver bars. The skeleton lay in the centermost bed, chain glinting like a bracelet of ice. The raven landed on the footrail, cocked its head, and croaked once. A sound like a key turning in a lock that should have stayed shut. Poirot knelt. The chain was new, links bright where they soared against bone. Staged post-mortem, the skull, he tilted it gently, triffuned with a modern burr. Crow's instrument, non? Crow's beard bristled. I've performed lobotomies in Harley Street, not charnel houses. The dim gramophone waited on a bedside table, horn blackened with soot. Poirot wound the crank. The needle dropped. Annalise's voice crystalline despite the years. If I vanish, look to the mirror. The truth is reflection, not reality. The record ended with a click, then reversed, her words backward, a demonic litany. Rita lunged to stop it. Poirot caught his wrist. The manager's sleeve ripped fully now, exposing the raven tattoo in full. Wings spread, beak open, eyes replaced by tiny diamonds that winked in the lantern light. Smuggling, Poirot said softly. Voss trained the birds to carry gems to Zurich. You were the courier. Ritter's monocle dangled by its ribbon. He paid me to keep the tunnel open, said the mountain was his vault. Isolde's voice echoed from the shadows. And Annalise. Dead, Ritter snapped. Avalanche. I saw the body myself, before Voss paid me to lose the report. Poirot lifted the raven necklace from the skeleton. The feathers were singed, identical to those at the crime scene. Yet someone dressed a corpse in her gown. Someone who knew the tunnel's secrets. Solange's blind eyes fixed on nothing. She never left. She waits beneath. Crow snorted. Stagecraft. Voss wanted a ghost to haunt his wife. I supplied the voice, the mirror, the recordings. He wanted to drive Isolde mad, punish her for not being Annalise. Isolde flinched as though struck. He kept me prisoner in my own marriage. Poirot moved to the gramophone. Beneath it, a false panel. Inside, a reel-to-reel tape, modern, labelled Greta, final. He held it to the light. Someone updated the technology. From the ward's far end came a scraping. Metal on stone. The raven took flight, vanishing into the dark. Poirot followed, lantern raised. A door, half hidden by collapsed shelving, stood ajar. Beyond, a smaller chamber, walls lined with mirrors, dozens, all cracked, all reflecting the lantern in fractured infinity. In the centre stood a tailor's dummy dressed in Annalise's wedding gown. The veil was pinned with raven feathers, the bodice soaked in fresh blood that dripped onto a silver tray. On the tray, a straight razor, edge gleaming. Poirot lifted it. The handle was warm. Used within the hour. Crow examined the mirrors. Two-way glass. Voss watched his seances from here. Recorded every gasp. One mirror swung open like a door. Behind, a narrow staircase spiralling upward. Poirot climbed. The others followed in single file, the raven circling above. The stairs emerged behind a tapestry in the conservatory, directly above the chaise where Voss died. The tapestry depicted Diana hunting. A hidden seam allowed a hand to pass through. Poirot demonstrated the razor would reach the throat perfectly. Entry and exit without footprints, he said. The snow on the balcony was undisturbed because the killer never left the hotel. Ritter's voice cracked. Then the scream piped through the ventilation grate. Poirot pointed to a brass funnel in the ceiling, the wax cylinder in the tunnel triggered by a timer. The clock stopped at 2:47 to confuse the timeline. Isolde touched the bloodied gown. Whose blood? Poirot sniffed the razor. Human. Type O, Voss's type, according to his medical file. But the quantity, he gestured to the tray. Theatrical. Pig's blood mixed with anticoagulant. Solange began to sway. The raven flies backward. The killer wears the victim's face. The mirrors suddenly lit from behind. Electric bulbs, triggered by a tripwire. In each glass appeared a reflection. Voss alive, throat slit, smiling. The images flickered, then synchronized, Voss raising a hand to his neck, drawing the razor across in perfect synchrony. Crow smashed one mirror. Projection! Voss filmed himself! The reel-to-reel in Poirot's pocket whirred to life on its own. A new voice, Voss's, recorded yesterday. If you hear this, I am already dead, or reborn. The snow will decide. The raven landed on the dummy's shoulder, plucked a feather and dropped it at Poirot's feet. This one was white, dipped in blood that spelled a single word. Greta. Isolde gasped. His understudy, from the Vienna Opera. She vanished the same winter as Anneliese. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Greta sang Anneliese's roles, had her range, her face with makeup. Voss kept her. To replace me, Isolde whispered. He said I was a poor copy. From the staircase came footsteps, light, deliberate. A woman emerged, veiled in white lace, face obscured. She carried a second razor. Greta! Poirot called. The woman tilted her head. The veil lifted just enough to reveal lips sewn shut with black thread. She pointed the razor at Isolde, then at herself, and slashed the threads. Blood welled. Her voice, when it came, was Anneliese's. Perfect, impossible. He kept me alive, in the dark, for 10 years. Ritter backed away. You're dead. I saw the avalanche. You saw what he paid you to see. She stepped into the light. The face was Isolde's, younger, unlined, eyes burning with decade-old rage. I am Greta, but I wore Anneliese so long, I became her. Crow lunged for the reel-to-reel. Poirot blocked him. You recorded her, sold her voice to Voss. Greta smiled. And you sold him the mirror. We all fed the monster. She turned to Isolde. He planned to kill you tonight, stage your suicide, blame the ghost. I was to take your place, permanently. Poirot's voice cut the air. Yet you killed him instead. Greta's eyes met his. He grew tired of me. Said the next understudy was younger. I used his own razor. The raven screamed. The mirrors went dark. When the light steadied, Greta was gone. Only the gown remained, blood spreading like a bridal train. Poirot picked up the white feather. The performance evolves, but the final act approaches. He turned to the group. We return to the conservatory. The stage is set. As they climbed the hidden stairs, the gramophone in the tunnel began to play again. Greta's voice now, singing an aria from Tristan und Isolde, the high sea cracking like ice under strain. Chapter 5. The Mirror's Confession. The conservatory had become a reliquary of ice and blood. Snow pressed against the glass like a congregation of ghosts, each pane a frozen breath from the mountain. The chandelier dripped crimson prisms. The wicker chaise still bore the imprint of Emile Voss's body, though the corpse had been removed to the cold larder hours ago. The air tasted of iron and orange blossom, life and death in uneasy communion. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, the cracked silver mirror reassembled on a music stand, its shards taped into a fractured hole. Around him, The suspects formed a ragged circle. Isolde, white-faced, Ritter, monocle fogged. Dr. Crow, beard bristling with defiance. Madame Solange, blind eyes fixed on nothing and everything. The raven, perched on the fountain's frozen nymph, wings half spread as though ready to pronounce judgment. Poirot's voice was soft, almost tender. We have chased shadows through tunnels and mirrors. Now we face the light. What little remains. He lifted the reel-to-reel tape, labelled Greta, Final. This is the aria's final take. Listen. He placed it on the portable player Ritter had fetched from the office. The tape hissed. Then Greta's voice soared. Annalise's voice, pure, heartbreaking, the high C sustained until the air itself seemed to shatter. Beneath the note, almost subliminal, a man's whisper, "Forgive me!" Isolde's hand flew to her throat. "Emile!" "Recorded yesterday," Poirot confirmed. While he still breathed, the confession of a man preparing his own death. Crow snorted. "Suicide, then. He slit his own throat for drama." Poirot shook his head. "Impossible. The angle is wrong. A right-handed man cannot draw a blade left to right across his own neck with such precision. And the force? Non. Someone stood behind the chaise." He turned the mirror so all could see. The fracture lines now formed a perfect silhouette. A man seated, another standing, arm extended. The mirror was the straight edge. The killer used it to guide the blade. Solange swayed. "The raven flies backward." Poirot rounded on her. "Enough theatre, madame. Your visions are fed by wires." He produced a tiny flesh-coloured earpiece from her lace cuff. "Crow's whispers. Stagecraft." The medium's blind eyes widened. You saw what you were paid to see." Poirot's tone was gentle, almost pitying. "But the dead do not need mediums. They need justice." He faced Crow. "You sold Voss the mirror. You recorded Greta's voice. You knew the tunnel. You are left-handed." Crow's smile was thin. "Circumstantial." Poirot lifted the scalpel case. "Scalpel number 3 missing. The wound depth, 4 centimeters, matches your instrument. You treated Voss's gout. You knew his blood type, his habits. You stood to lose everything if he exposed your fraud to Scotland Yard." Crow's beard twitched. "He was blackmailing me, yes, but I didn't kill him." "Then who?" Isolde demanded. "Greta. She was locked in the attic. Emile kept her drugged, chained. I heard her singing through the vents." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Locked, yes, but by whom?" He moved to the hidden tapestry door. The staircase beyond was narrow, the air thick with myrrh. At the top, a small chamber. Iron bed, wrist manacles, a tray of morphine vials. On the wall, a calendar. Every date crossed out, save today's, marked with a raven feather. "Greta was prisoner," Poirot said, "but the key," he produced it from his pocket. The one the raven had dropped in Chapter 1 was delivered by bird. Someone freed her. Ritter's monocle fell again. I found the key in the dumbwaiter. Thought it was Voss's spare." Poirot turned to Isolde. "You discovered the attic weeks ago. You heard Greta sing. You knew your husband planned to replace you." Isolde's voice was ice. "I confronted him. He laughed, said I was temporary." Poirot lifted the locket from the crime scene. Inside, 2 hairs. One dark, coarse, Emile's. One blonde, fine, Annalise's or Greta's. "You clipped his hair post-mortem. A trophy." Isolde's fingers trembled. "I loved him, even when he was monstrous." Poirot's gaze swept the room. "Love, hate, greed, fear. Each of you had motive, but only one had opportunity." He returned to the mirror. "The reflection shows the truth. Hold it thus." He angled it toward the chaise, and the killer's face appears. The glass flickered. For an instant, Crow's reflection stood behind Voss, scalpel raised. Then the image dissolved into static. "Projection," Crow sneered. "You rigged it." Poirot smiled. "No, the mirror is two-way. Behind it," he tapped the wall. "A camera. Voss filmed everything. His insurance." He pressed a panel. A hidden drawer opened, revealing a spool of 16mm film, developed in the darkroom beneath the boiler. The final frame, 2:46 a.m., Voss alive, writing in his ledger. 2:47, the clock stops. 2:48, Crow enters, mirror in hand. 2:49, the blade flashes. Crow lunged. Poirot sidestepped. The doctor crashed into the fountain, ice shattering. Ritter pinned his arms. "You swapped the prop blade," Poirot continued calmly. "Voss planned to fake his death with pig's blood and a collapsible razor. You gave him steel. Why?" Crow spat blood. "He was going to expose me. The mirror, the recordings, fraud. I'd be ruined. He laughed when I begged. Said the ravens would carry my reputation to the devil." Solange began to weep. "I only wanted to help the dead. Speak. You helped the living lie," Poirot said. "Greta was your accomplice." Crow shook his head. "She was Voss's creature. I freed her to create chaos, thought she'd kill Isolde. Instead, she vanished." Poirot lifted the white feather from the dummy. "Greta is gone, but she left her voice." He played the reel-to-reel again. Beneath the aria, Voss's whisper, "The snow will bury everything, but the mirror remembers." Isolde sank to her knees. "He wanted to die as Annalise's martyr." "No," Poirot corrected. "He wanted to live as her widower. With diamonds and a new identity, Crow ensured he died as himself." The raven croaked once, then flew to Poirot's shoulder. In its beak, a diamond ring, Annalise's wedding band, engraved to A from E forever. Poirot closed the mirror. The reflection showed only the room, empty, waiting. "The performance ends," he said, "but the encore." The lights died. In the darkness, glass shattered, the mirror exploding outward. When the emergency lanterns flared, Crow was gone, the tapestry door swinging. Ritter cursed. "The tunnel!" Poirot was already moving. "He runs to the snow, but the mountain keeps its own." They raced down the hidden stairs. The tunnel was empty, but footprints, Crow's brogues, led deeper toward the sanatorium. The raven flew ahead, a black arrow in the gloom. At the ward's end, a new door stood open. The old freight lift to the surface. Snow poured in, a white waterfall. Crow's silhouette struggled upward, coat flapping like broken wings. Poirot shouted, "Stop! The avalanche!" Too late. The lift cable snapped. The cage plummeted, taking Crow with it. A scream cut short. Then silence, broken only by the soft hush of settling snow. When they reached the shaft, the lift was buried. Only Crow's hand protruded, fingers curled around the silver mirror, now whole, reflecting the storm. Poirot knelt. In the glass, a final image flickered. Voss and Crow, shaking hands over the mirror, both smiling. "The devil's bargain," Poirot murmured, "sealed in blood." The raven landed beside the hand, plucked the mirror free, and dropped it at Poirot's feet. The glass was warm. From the darkness above, a woman's laugh, Greta's or Annalise's, or both, echoed down the shaft, then faded into the wind. Poirot closed his eyes. The mirror confesses, but the snow keeps the confession. Chapter 6. The Raven's Ledger. The avalanche had swallowed Dr. Crow and the freight lift whole, sealing the tunnel mouth with a wall of ice that gleamed like polished marble under the emergency lanterns. The hotel above felt suddenly smaller. as though the mountain had inhaled and not yet exhaled. In the conservatory, the broken mirror lay in pieces, each shard reflecting a different lie. Hercule Poirot stood amid the wreckage, the raven perched on his shoulder like a dark familiar. The bird's talons pricked through his coat. Its eyes were black beads of judgment. On the music stand rested the reassembled ledger, raven feathers glued back into place, crimson entries glowing like fresh wounds. Poirot addressed the survivors, voice calm as a winter dawn. One killer is buried, but the script was written by many hands. Isolde sat on the chaise where her husband had died, locket open in her lap. The two hairs, one dark, one blonde, curled together like lovers. Greta sang for him every night, she whispered. Through the vents, I thought I was going mad. Ritter, monocle restored, stood rigid. Crow confessed. Case closed. No. Poirot lifted the torn ledger page. This was written after Crow left the room. Ink still wet at 2:46 a.m. Someone else held the pen. Madame Solange rocked in her chair, earpiece dangling like a noose. The raven flies backward. Poirot rounded on her. Enough, madame. Your visions were wired, but the birds were real. He opened the ledger to a new page, previously hidden beneath a false cover. A list in Voss's hand. At the bottom, a final line. The snow buries everything but the truth. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A cast list, but one actor played 2 roles. He turned to Isolde. You discovered Greta weeks ago. You heard her sing. You knew Emile planned to kill you. Stage your suicide, blame the ghost, escape with Greta as the new Madame Voss. Isolde's chin lifted. He told me himself. Said I was a rehearsal. Poirot produced the key the raven had dropped. You sent the bird to Greta, freed her, gave her the razor. Isolde laughed, sharp, brittle. I gave her freedom. She chose murder. Ritter stepped forward. Impossible. Madame Voss was in her room. The maid brought tea at 2:30. Poirot smiled. The maid brought tea to room 12, but Madame Voss moved to room 14, Greta's attic, days ago, to confront her rival. He opened the locket fully. Behind the hairs, a tiny photograph. Isolde and Greta, identical save for the eyes. Sisters, not understudy and star, twins separated at birth, Annalise's secret. Isolde's voice cracked. Our mother sold Greta to the opera. Emile found her, bought her, kept her in the dark. I was the public face. She was the voice. Poirot nodded. You planned together. Greta would kill Emile. You would inherit. The avalanche would trap the witnesses. Solange began to weep. I only wanted the spirits to speak. You spoke for them, Poirot said. Crow fed you lines. Ritter smuggled diamonds. Greta sang. Isolde watched. He lifted the white feather from the dummy. Under magnification. A microscopic engraving. G to I, finish it. Greta's final note, Poirot said, delivered by Raven. Ritter's face crumpled. I didn't know about the twins. Voss paid me to keep the tunnel open. The birds carried gems. I thought it was harmless. Poirot turned to the gramophone. The final wax cylinder, labelled Greta, final, spun again. Greta's voice, but now Isolde's beneath, harmonizing. We were one soul in 2 bodies. He tore us apart. Tonight, we are whole. The high sea soared, then shattered, literally. The needle snapped. Silence fell. Poirot faced Isolde. You swapped rooms. Greta descended the hidden stairs at 2:45. You stopped the clock at 2:47. Symbolism. Greta slit his throat at 2:49. You triggered the scream at 3:17 via the vent. Crow arrived at 2:48 to swap the blade. Too late. He became the perfect scapegoat. Isolde stood. Prove it. Poirot lifted the mirror shard. In it, Isolde's reflection but Greta's eyes. The mirror remembers faces. This shard was in Greta's hand when she cut the threads from her lips. Your blood mingled. He produced a handkerchief, stained with blood from the dummy. Type AB rare. Both twins share it. Voss was O. Ritter lunged for the door. The raven dive-bombed, talons raking his scalp. He screamed, stumbled. Poirot caught his arm. "You smuggled the diamonds," Poirot said. "But you also smuggled Greta's food. You knew." Ritter sagged. "Voss threatened my family. I had no choice." Solange rose, blind eyes streaming. "I heard everything through the earpiece. Crow made me say, 'The raven flies backward.' It was code. Greta was coming." Poirot gathered the clues. The ledger, the key, the feather, the mirror shard, the broken needle. The performance was perfect, but the twins forgot one thing. He opened the conservatory skylight. Snow poured in, a white curtain. The raven flew upward, circling. "Birds migrate," Poirot said. "This one was trained to return to Vienna. In its leg band, he held up a tiny capsule, a map to the diamonds, and a confession in Greta's hand." Isolde backed toward the balcony. "She's gone. You'll never find her." Poirot smiled. "She's already here." The raven landed on Isolde's shoulder. In its beak, a second locket, identical to hers. Inside, a photograph of Greta, throat slit, eyes open. Isolde screamed. The raven dropped the locket and flew to Poirot. "Greta killed herself," Poirot said softly. "In the tunnel, after the murder, she left you the scene and the blame." He produced a final, reel-to-reel from the attic. Greta's voice, recorded at dawn. "Sister, the snow buries everything, including us. Forgive me." Isolde collapsed, sobbing. "She was the voice. I was the face. Without her, I'm nothing." Poirot closed the ledger. "You are both free now, and both guilty." Ritter handcuffed Isolde with his belt. Solange began to pray in Latin. The raven preened, satisfied. Outside, the wind shifted. The avalanche groaned, then settled. Dawn bled across the sky, pink as frozen blood. Poirot addressed the raven. "You carried the truth, mon ami. Now carry it to the police." He attached the capsule to the bird's leg. It launched into the high storm, a black arrow against the white. In the conservatory, the chandelier flickered once, then steadied. The clock, rewound by Poirot, struck 6:00 a.m. The hands moved forward for the first time since the murder. The house that Snow built exhaled. The performance was over. But as the survivors were led away, Poirot paused at the threshold. In the frost on the glass, new words had appeared, written by melting snow. "The raven returns." He smiled. "Naturellement, the final act is never final." The bird's cry echoed from the peaks, fading into the white silence. Chapter 7. The Key to the Conservatory. The conservatory doors stood open to the storm, snow drifting across the marble in soft, deliberate waves. The chandelier had been rehung, its prisms washed clean of blood, yet the air still carried the faint iron scent of what had happened beneath it. Hercule Poirot moved through the room with the precision of a watchmaker, gloved fingers brushing the wicker chaise, the frozen fountain, the brass ventilation grate that had piped a dead woman's scream into the night. At 5:47 a.m., the sky was the colour of watered ink. The avalanche had begun to shift. Far below, the funicular cables glinted like a promise. Rescue was hours away, but the case was not. Poirot had summoned the survivors back to the scene of the crime. Ritter, Solange, Isolde in cuffs fashioned from Ritter's own belt, for one final reconstruction. He began with the skylight, 30 feet above the floor. A brass ladder folded into the ceiling like a secret had been discovered behind the tapestry. Poirot climbed it now, boots ringing on the rungs. At the top, a narrow catwalk circled the dome. Snow sifted through a cracked pane. The wind moaned like a choir of widows. "The killer entered here," Poirot called down. "No footprints on the balcony because the snow never touched them." He pointed to a pulley system, newly oiled. A rope ran from the catwalk down the wall, through a hidden eyelet, and into the dumbwaiter shaft. The body was lowered at 2:30. The clock stopped at 2:47. Symbolism, yes, but also mechanics. A weight on the rope triggered the hands. Ritter's voice floated up, hoarse. Crow's work. He was an engineer before the occult. Non. Poirot descended. Crow swapped the blade, but the stage was built by many. He moved to the ventilation grate. Inside, a wax cylinder, still warm from the boiler's heat. The scream at 3:17, pre-recorded, yes, but triggered by a timer in the tunnel. The same timer that released the raven with the key. Solange sat blind and trembling. "I heard the gears through the earpiece. I thought it was spirits." Poirot knelt before her. "You heard Voss. He built the mechanism himself. You merely announced it." He produced the master key, the one Ritter swore never left his belt. A duplicate, brass dulled by use. Found in Greta's attic. She descended the hidden stairs at 2:45, unlocked the conservatory from within, arranged the scene. Isolde stopped the clock. Crow arrived at 2:48 to swap the prop blade for steel. Too late. The cut was already made. Isolde laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Greta wanted him dead. I wanted him gone. We were precise. Poirot turned to the chaise. The blood spirals. Perfect artistic. Greta's signature. She trained as a painter before the opera. He lifted the raven feather from the evidence tray. Under magnification. A fingerprint in blood. Greta's. She held it as she cut, a message to her sister. Ritter sagged. "I smuggled the diamonds. I kept the tunnel open, but I never touched the blade." Poirot nodded. "You were the courier. Solange the herald. Crow the betrayer. The twins, the authors." He opened the ledger to a final page, hidden beneath the binding. A map, inked in crimson. The hotel, the tunnel, the aviary. At the centre, a single word. Greta. "She planned to escape with the diamonds," Poirot said. "The raven was to carry the map to Vienna. But Isolde betrayed her." Isolde's eyes blazed. "She was going to leave me with nothing. I locked the attic after she descended. I took the key." Poirot produced the second locket, the one the raven had dropped. Inside, Greta's suicide note, written in blood on rice paper. "The snow buries everything, including us. I was the voice, you were the face. Now we are both silent." He turned to the skylight. The raven circled above, a black star against the dawn. In its beak, a diamond large as a quail's egg. "The final piece," Poirot said. "Voss hid the stones in the bird's eyes. This one was Greta's payment. She trained it to return to her, even in death." He attached the diamond to the evidence bag. "The avalanche will clear by noon. The police will find Greta's body in the tunnel, throat slit by her own hand. Isolde will stand trial for conspiracy, Ritter for smuggling, Solange for fraud." Solange began to sing, an aria, voice cracked but true. The raven answered, a perfect echo. Poirot closed the ledger. The performance ends where it began, in snow. He moved to the conservatory doors. Outside, the avalanche groaned, then parted. Sunlight speared through, gilding the drifts. The funicular cables began to move. But as the group stepped into the cold, The raven landed on the chaise. In its beak, a final feather, white, pristine, tipped with fresh blood. It dropped the feather onto the seat, exactly where Voss's hand had rested. Poirot paused. The blood spelled a single word. Soon. He smiled, the little grey cells gleaming. The raven keeps its own counsel, but the truth is patient. The bird launched into the sky, a black arrow against the white. Below, the hotel exhaled, relieved or merely waiting. The key to the conservatory turned in Poirot's pocket, though no one had touched it. The lock clicked shut behind them. The house that Snow built was silent once more. Chapter 8. The voice beneath the snow dawn. Bled across the Alps, turning the snowfields rose and gold, as though the mountain itself blushed for what it had witnessed. The avalanche had carved a narrow corridor to the funicular station. The cables hummed, impatient. Rescue climbers, Swiss guards in red coats, were already ascending, their crampons ringing like bells. Yet Hercule Poirot lingered in the conservatory, the doors sealed once more, the key heavy in his palm. The room had been swept clean, blood scrubbed, chaise reupholstered, chandelier polished until it wept light. Only the clock remained stopped at 2:47, its hands frozen in accusation. Poirot stood before it, the raven on his shoulder, the final evidence laid out like a solitaire hand. The duplicate key, the diamond, the suicide locket, the bloodied white feather. Isolde, Ritter and Solange waited in the lobby under guard. The case was closed. Greta the killer, Isolde the conspirator, Crow the betrayer buried beneath ice. Yet the little grey cells stirred, restless. Something sang beneath the silence, a note too low for human ears. Poirot addressed the empty room. "You have played your part, mon petit. Now speak." He wound the gramophone. The final cylinder, unlabelled, discovered in the clock's pendulum case, spun. A man's voice, Voss's, recorded in the tunnel at 2:46 a.m. "If you hear this, the snow has lied. The twins were decoys. The raven carries the truth. Follow the voice beneath." The needle lifted. Silence. Poirot opened the clock face. Inside the mechanism, a second cylinder, smaller, wrapped in raven down. He played it. Greta's voice, faint, recorded post-mortem. "He kept me alive to sing, but the mountain kept another. Listen at the fountain." The raven took flight, landing on the frozen nymph. Poirot followed. The fountain's basin was cracked. Beneath the ice, a glint. He chipped with his cane. A metal box, solid shut. Inside, a reel-to-reel tape and a single raven egg, black, veined with silver. The tape played Voss again, hours before death. "The egg is the vault. The voice is the key. Crow thinks he betrayed me. He merely opened the door." Poirot's eyes narrowed. He returned to the hidden staircase, descended to the tunnel. The avalanche had sealed Crow's grave, but a new passage had been dug, narrow, deliberate, leading upward to the aviary. The aviary was a glass dome behind the hotel, shattered by storm. Inside, dozens of ravens, eyes glittering with diamonds. One bird, larger, wings tipped with white, perched on a swing. Its leg band read, "Annalise." Poirot approached. The bird opened its beak. A human voice issued forth. "Annalise's, perfect alive. Emile kept me in the egg, 10 years. The twins were my daughters. Greta sang my roles. Isolde wore my face. I was the voice beneath the snow." The bird flew to Poirot's arm. In its beak, a locket, third of its kind. Inside, a photograph of Annalise, throat unmarred, eyes burning. Poirot climbed to the aviary's loft. A small studio, recording equipment, morphine vials, a surgical table. On it, a woman's body, throat slit, face obscured by a lace veil. Not Greta, not Isolde, Annalise, aged but alive until hours ago. He lifted the veil. The wound was fresh, self-inflicted, a note pinned to the lace. The snow buried me. I buried them. The raven returns the truth. Poirot reconstructed the final act. Annalise had survived the avalanche, hidden by Voss in the sanatorium. She birthed twins, Greta and Isolde, raised one in light, one in dark. Voss planned to fake his death, escape with Annalise and the diamonds, using the twins as scapegoats. Crow discovered the truth, swapped the blade to silence Voss. Greta, freed by Isolde, killed Voss in revenge. Isolde locked Greta in, unaware Annalise watched from the aviary. When Crow fled, Annalise followed, slit her own throat to end the cycle. The raven, her final messenger, carried the egg, the tape, the locket. Poirot returned to the conservatory. The clock struck 6 a.m., its mechanism freed by the egg's removal. The hands moved forward. He gathered the survivors. The voice beneath the snow was Annalise. She orchestrated everything. The twins were puppets, Crow the fool, Voss the architect who built his own tomb. Isolde wept. She was our mother? And your jailer, Poirot said. She wanted you both free, in death. Ritter bowed his head. The diamonds? Confiscated. The ravens will be released. Solange smiled, blind eyes seeing at last. The spirits spoke true. Poirot opened the doors. Sunlight flooded in, melting the frost words, soon. The raven flew skyward, the egg in its talons shattering against the dome. Silver dust rained down, diamonds ground to powder. The funicular arrived. Poirot boarded with the evidence. As the car ascended, the hotel shrank below, a white cake in a white world. The raven followed, circling once, then vanishing into the sun. Poirot raised his hat. Adieu, madame. The snow keeps its secrets, but the little grey cells, they remember. The voice beneath the snow was silent at last. Chapter 9. The Snow-Dark Truth. The funicular creaked upward through a corridor of ice. The Grand Hotel Étoile des Alpes, shrinking to a child's toy beneath a wedding cake of snow. Hercule Poirot sat alone in the glass cabin. The raven perched on the luggage rack above, its obsidian eyes reflecting the sunrise in tiny, perfect mirrors. In his lap lay the evidence box. 3 lockets, the shattered egg, the silver dust diamonds, the final tape labelled Annalise, Truth. The Swiss guards had taken Isolde, Ritter and Solange in the descending car. Their faces pressed to the windows like ghosts already fading. Poirot addressed the bird. You have carried the burden long enough, mon ami. Now the mountain gives it to the law. The raven croaked once, a sound like a verdict, and dropped her final object into Poirot's gloved hand. A 4th locket, smaller, gold. Inside, a miniature photograph of a newborn. 2 infants, actually, pressed cheek to cheek. On the back, engraved in a trembling hand, Greta and Isolde. 3rd March, 1905. My daughters, my curse. The cabin lurched. The cables sang. Poirot opened the tape recorder. Annalise's voice, recorded in the aviary moments before her suicide, filled the small space. If you hear this, the snow has lied for the last time. I survived the avalanche because Emile willed it. He dragged me, half dead, to the sanatorium, kept me alive with morphine and madness. I birthed the twins in secret. Greta had my voice, Isolde my face. He raised one in Vienna's light, one in the hotel's dark. I was the ghost between. Crow discovered me last winter, thought to blackmail Emile. Instead, Emile paid him to perfect the illusion. Mirror, recordings, ravens with diamond eyes. The plan? Fake Emil's death, blame the twins, escape with me and the fortune. But the girls rebelled. Greta slit his throat with the prop blade before Crow could swap it. Isolde locked her sister in. I watched from the aviary, feeding the birds their lines. When Crow fled into the tunnel, I followed. Cut my own throat to end the play. The raven carries the epilogue. Tell my daughters, the snow buries everything, but blood remembers. The tape hissed to silence. The raven preened satisfied. At the upper station, Inspector Blanc of the Swiss police waited, breath pluming in the cold. Poirot handed over the box, the lockets the tape. The mother was the author, the twins the tragedy, Crow the fool, Voss the architect who built his own mausoleum. Blanc's eyes widened at the diamonds, and the birds, released. Poirot gestured to the sky. Dozens of ravens wheeled above the peaks, black commas against the white page of snow. One broke formation, diving toward the hotel. In its beak, a single white feather. Blanc crossed himself. The mountain keeps its own. Poirot boarded the train to Geneva. In the dining car, he ordered chocolate chaude and a croissant. The raven followed, perching on the seat opposite. The waiter, startled, nearly dropped the tray. "Pay no attention," Poirot said. "He is with me." The bird opened its beak. Annelise's voice, faint but clear. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. The little grey cells have set us free." Then silence. The raven dissolved into smoke. No, into snowflakes that melted on the tablecloth, leaving only the white feather. Poirot lifted it. The blood had dried to rust. Beneath, in microscopic script, the truth is snow dark, but it melts. He tucked the feather into his breast pocket, over his heart. The train plunged into a tunnel. Darkness swallowed all. When light returned, the seat was empty. Only a faint scent of myrrh lingered. At Geneva station, Poirot stepped onto the platform. The raven was gone, but high above, circling the clock tower, a single blackbird cried once, a sound like a curtain falling. Poirot raised his hat. "Adieu, madame. The performance is finished. The house lights rise." He walked into the city, the feather warm against his chest, the little grey cells quiet at last. The snow-dark truth had melted into morning. Chapter 10. Epilogue. The Little Grey Cells. The Orient Express glided southward through the spring thaw, its wheels singing a lullaby of steel on steel. Hercule Poirot occupied compartment 7, the same one he had taken from Istanbul years before, though the world outside had changed utterly. Snow still capped the distant Alps, but closer hills were green with promise, and the Rhone flashed silver beneath the sun. In his lap lay a small leather notebook, its pages filled with neat, precise script, the final report for Inspector Blanc, copied in triplicate, the original already filed in Geneva. The raven was gone. Not dead. Poirot refused to believe that, but released. On the platform at Geneva, the bird had circled once, dropped the white feather into his hand, and vanished into the rafters of the station. A porter swore he saw it board a train to Vienna. A nun claimed it perched on the cathedral spire and sang Ave Maria in a woman's voice. Poirot smiled at both stories. Truth, like snow, melts into many shapes. He opened the notebook to the last page. Conclusion. Emile Voss constructed a theatre of obsession. Anneliese Voss, presumed dead, survived to become its unseen director. The twins, Greta and Isolde, were her instruments, one caged in darkness, one paraded in light. Dr. Crow, Herr Ritter, and Madame Solange were hired players who forgot the script was written in blood. The murder weapon, a theatrical razor swapped too late. The locked room, a skylight, a pulley, a dumbwaiter, a stopped clock, the supernatural, stagecraft, morphine, and ravens trained to carry diamonds and lies. The resolution, suicide, confession, avalanche. The cost, 5 lives, 1 hotel, a fortune in powdered gems. The moral, the snow buries everything except the little grey cells. Poirot closed the book. Outside, Lake Geneva sparkled like a dropped mirror. He thought of the conservatory, the blood spirals, the chandelier dripping crimson prisms. He thought of Annalise's final aria echoing through the aviary, of Greta's high sea cracking like ice, of Isolde's face when she learned her mother had orchestrated her grief. A soft knock. The conductor entered, cap in hand. Monsieur Poirot, a telegram from London. Poirot slit the envelope with his fruit knife. Stop press. Vienna Opera reopens with new soprano. Voice identical to Annalise Voss. Raven spotted on stage. Police baffled. Poirot's moustache twitched. He folded the telegram into a perfect square and tucked it beside the white feather in his breast pocket. Naturellement, he murmured. The curtain never falls for good. He opened the window. Warm air rushed in, carrying the scent of lilacs and distant snow. Somewhere above the clouds, a raven wheeled, black against the blue, a single note of darkness in a brightening world. Poirot raised his cup of chocolate shawd. To the dead, who speak loudest when silent, and to the living, who listen too late. The train whistle sounded mournful and sweet. The Alps fell away behind him, white teeth in a smiling horizon. In the compartment, the white feather stirred, though there was no wind. A single drop of water, melted snow or a tear, fell onto the page of the notebook, blurring the final line. The snow-dark truth is this. Some stories end only when the mountain forgets. Poirot closed his eyes. The little grey cells, for once, were content.